While I'm setting up the interview, this is with Charles Moore, former editor of the Daily Telegraph, Telegraph and The Spectator, and known for writing biographies on Margaret Thatcher. Thank you, Charles Moore. Thanks so much for arranging this. Firstly, talking about the royal family, if we can, quite briefly, did Harry and Meghan make the right decision to leave the royal family and to exit to Canada?
I think it's very difficult because if you're royal, and it has duties attached to it. And if you detach yourself, you're effectively laying aside your royalness. So it's rather difficult to have it both ways. And I think that if they, of course, wish to make the break, obviously they should be allowed to, but you can't really ride both horses. And I think that problem will remains.
So would Diana have understood the decision for Harry and Meghan? Would she have sympathised with them to move abroad, do you think?
I don't know, of course, what the Princess of Wales would have done. The whole situation was very unsatisfactory for her and unsatisfactory with her, but it was different because there was a divorce, so then she automatically became unroyal by divorcing, but that didn't solve the problem either, because of course she was very famous and in many quarters very popular, so it's a sort of on-running problem.
And you're very well known for your multiple biographies on Margaret Thatcher. It's obviously now been over 5 years since her death. Talking about Brexit,
7 years.
7 years, even, yeah. The time goes really quick. Where would she have stood? Obviously, her position when she was alive. Where would she have kind of stood on Brexit? If you could explain.
Well, Mrs. Thatcher developed her views. She started pro-European in the 1970s. I don't think she was ever very strongly pro-European, but she was pro-European. She got fed up with what she saw as growing European claims to take away British sovereignty, and also by what she saw as the spread of socialism through the European community as it then was. And that's what her Bruges speech was about, her famous Bruges speech in 1988. However, that speech is not an anti-European speech. What she was saying was, we must be wider, we must take in what was then the Soviet Union countries, Warsaw Pact countries, as they become freer. We must help them to become freer. And also that we should not have centralisation, socialism and the frontiers of the state coming back after she'd pushed them away. And this was really an attack on Jacques Delors, the head of the Commission, who was in charge of all of this. She wasn't saying let's leave, but she was saying let's have a different type of European community. From then on, she became increasingly hostile. Shortly before she left office, she said in a couple of interviews, one of them with me, that there ought to be a referendum on the single currency. So she was the person who was putting the idea of the referendum back into the political bloodstream, and she stuck by that idea in after years. And so she was the chief, I would say, the first author of the idea that we should have a referendum. Mm-hmm. And over time, that idea shifted from being on the single currency to being on actual membership. And so you can see the whole thing running through from late Thatcher government, very, very late Thatcher government, to 2016. After she left office, she came to the private view that we should leave the European Union. And she said that to me and to a lot of other people, but she was always advised not to say it publicly, because it was considered too divisive and troublesome, and she was becoming an old lady and so on. So she never did say it publicly, so far as I know, but that was her view. So you could say that she was the mother of Brexit.
Mm-hmm. And then moving on quickly, is it likely that Boris will get a trading agreement by the end of the year? And if he can't get a trading agreement, where do you see us going?
I'm afraid I can't read the runes about how the EU is going to behave in this negotiation. All I can say is that I think it's now founded on the right principles, because the first is we have left. So there's no longer, one reason it was so difficult to negotiate before was that we hadn't, and therefore the EU was playing a game with us to see whether we were serious. I don't blame them for that, actually. They need to find out whether we're serious. We were serious and we've left. So now in a way it's much simpler. And now we're taking a strong position, which is also correct as a negotiating tactic, and I think correct in principle, which is that we're trying to diverge, not stick together. That is the logic of Brexit is not convergence. That's what we're breaking away from. It's divergence, but hopefully in a friendly and constructive manner. And this has been clearly stated. The day I speak to you, it's been reported of David Frost, the negotiator, saying this in a very clear way. This seems to be a much more hopeful way of going forward, and actually one that's more, paradoxically, more likely to reach agreement than the previous position. However, who knows, particularly about timing. I can imagine there'll be a lot of games about timing.
So do you not think it's going to be achieved in the end of the year? Like, is that
I really don't know.
No.
I don't think anybody could know. But people are staking out positions now, and positions can shift.
Yeah. And finally, just quickly on Extinction Rebellion, yesterday they dug up a lawn outside Cambridge University, I think it was Trinity College actually, over Trinity's stance on oil and gas companies. Did they have the right mind to do this? Is it actually like helpful for the cause, digging up, like kind of destructing the land?
Well, I'm personally a Trinity man, and I'm obviously disgusted by their behaviour. They have no right to do this. They're probably committing a minor crime. It's offensive. Trinity, of all the colleges in all universities in the country, has done more for scientific understanding than any other.
Yeah.
I believe it has more Nobel Prizes than the whole of France.
Yeah.
The idea that these people know better than the people who've made such marvellous discoveries for our civilization, including the capacity to deal with problems like climate change, seems to me utterly wrong, and I'm sure that people recognise that.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Charles Moore. I really appreciate it.